Hello and welcome to Artifacts, the monthly show on City Cable 34 in which we talk about the arts in Minneapolis. I'm Phill Lindsay. Later on we're going to have a couple of guests, Donna Norberg from the Minneapolis Arts Commission and Barb Seivert, who's with the Mental Health Resources. We'll be talking about a program and a project that they're involved in. But first I'm pleased to introduce Craig Dunne, who's with Very Special Arts Minnesota, and we're going to be talking about that program and some of what they do here in Minneapolis and actually indeed in the state of Minnesota. So Craig, thanks. Glad to have you here.
Hello.
Now, Very Special Arts Minnesota, the title gives us a sense of what that's about, but maybe you could explain a little bit about what it is that VSA does.
We're part of a national and, in fact, an international network of agencies that provides arts opportunities for people with disabilities. We work with people having all sorts of disabilities in all age groups, and we try and incorporate all of the art forms as well. So it's a very wide-ranging mission that we have, and there are state agencies in every state of the country, and I think there are VSA affiliates in 89 countries.
I had no idea it was so international.
Yeah.
How old an organization is this? Is this a recent thing?
Since the mid-'70s. We at Very Special Arts Minnesota have been incorporated since 1986 and have been kind of up and down in terms of activities since then. We're in kind of a reshaping mode right now. In fact, last week our board of directors has started to give us a new mission rather than focusing on specific programs that we do for people with disabilities in the various art forms. We're going to try and serve more as a service agency in connecting people with disabilities into other arts agencies, both in the cities and throughout the state. Because of our staffing right now, which is kind of low, we can't do the high intensive work in terms of programming, but we hope to be able to be kind of a networker, and in that way make the programs that we do and the services that we provide that much more integrated into the fabric of the arts community, again, both in the cities and throughout the state.
So you'll be encouraging, and the old word, kind of leveraging what some of the other arts organizations, and I suppose the school districts and...
Right. There are lots of different ways that we can do that. We can do that in terms of training arts professionals to work with people with disabilities. We can work with the individual artists who may have some specific disabilities to open their work into the regular mainstream settings, whether it be visual arts or theater arts or musical arts, and allowing them to be players, I guess, in the arts community.
Well, now you raised something that I hadn't thought of before, but this is not only for folks with disabilities, but also artists who may have special needs as well.
Oh, absolutely. It covers the whole gamut, and that's one of the reasons why we've had a little problem in years past in terms of focusing, because when you consider all of the disability areas and you consider all of the art forms, we're kind of everything to, or all things to all people, and we've been kind of catch as catch can in that. And we want to focus more, partly because of limited financial resources right now, but also because we want to be very good at a couple of things. And that came out of some long-range planning that the board is doing right now. And I guess I talk that way right now too, because not only am I interim executive director this summer, but I am also the president of the board of directors and have been for about 2.5 years now.
And those are just two of the hats, because you're also involved professionally.
I'm also a music therapist in the Anoka-Hennepin School District. I've worked with mentally handicapped students in the Anoka-Hennepin district since 1984 as bringing their music curriculum to them. I did the same thing for 6 years in a district outside of Milwaukee, and so my background of both music education and music therapy that I got at the University of Kansas, it all has come to play in providing arts for people with disabilities.
And in talking just a moment or two before the show, you seem very enthusiastic about what you do professionally.
Oh, personally, I find a lot of benefit through my mode of expression, which is music, and I've sure seen it with the students that I work through in music. And then since I've come to Very Special Arts in 1988, I've seen it in countless other art forms too. So yeah, lots of rewards.
Can you give an example or two of specifically what you do when you're working with a student, I guess, in the school system?
Well,
sure, it varies a lot.
Oh, sure. The students that I work with are very low intellectual functioning and often very low in terms of physical functioning too. So if I can get them to learn how to use a tape recorder, that is a major step. If I can get them to, there's a special instrument called an omnichord that is an electronic auto harp. And if I can get them to play a simple one-chord song just by pushing a button and then doing some type of verbalizing with it, that gets to be a very reinforcing thing for them, a very enjoyable thing for them. And since their recreational pursuits are not going to be very broad as they grow up, anything that we can bring to those types of people helps in their overall development and their quality of life.
Any major dramatic breakthroughs you've ever participated in, or?
Well, in terms of major, you know, it's always a question of degree from the person that's looking at it. To a parent that now has an activity that their child can do that is enjoyable, even though, again, it might just be playing a tape recorder, to them that's major. In terms of finding some new skills or new well, like the idiot savant, where they have this, they might not have any other skills except for being able to play on a piano. I've never really developed that. I've seen a couple, but I've never worked with those folks.
So a lot of meaning for the families involved beyond the individual that you might be sitting and working with.
Absolutely.
Other examples in some of the other art disciplines? I know music is your background, but what does an art therapist do, or maybe a dance therapist or anything? What are some of
Well,
the...
I guess kind of coming into that, one of the programs that Very Special Arts had this year, and this is something that was sponsored by the National Very Special Arts Organization. It's the 200th anniversary of the White House this year. And so the Bushes decided to have a big event, which will happen this October. And in conjunction with Very Special Arts, a call for art went out to special education teachers, art teachers, in upper elementary and junior high schools. And every state solicited for art from those populations depicting life in the White House. And we had 28 entries this past year.
From around Minnesota?
From throughout Minnesota. We had 28 entries. Those 28 pieces were shown at the Capitol in St. Paul for about a week in February. And of those 28, 4 were selected to go to our national office, and then 1 was selected for inclusion into the show that will be in October. And those individuals, 1 from each state, will be going to the White House with one of their parents in October and spending 4 or 5 days on the White House and on Very Special Arts, seeing the White House, seeing Washington, and having their paintings, in most cases, shown in the White House and throughout Washington, D.C.
Sounds like a wonderful program.
So our winner, and the winner was selected in May, is a boy from Minneapolis who is actually of Hmong descent, and his disability is that his hands, actually he received some very, very serious burns, and his fingers were all burned off. And so his painting, which I guess we have,
you have an image here?
Kind of black and white here, that we'll be able to see, is the 1805 White House, and he did that just with no fingers. He has hands, and he puts the paintbrush in between his hands and paints it. So his name is Phua Ku, and he goes to Dowling School in Minneapolis. And so it's a big, big step. Not only was it just a great experience for him to win this, but just the recognition of any abilities by his classmates, his schoolmates, just a tremendous jump in self-esteem. And so he's our winner. He'll be going to Washington, D.C.
It's a lovely
in
looking
October.
picture. It looks like a nice winter scene here with
Right.
kind of the White House in Minnesota almost. So quite impressive. You've also given me a thought here, ask a question. What is the relative size of the population of the folks that Very Special Arts might work with, either case by case or How many
Well,
folks are out there in our schools and communities that...
that I don't have a number on closely at hand. I know that I work with, or have worked in the Anoka-Hennepin system, which is the second largest district, with about 150 students that have severe mental handicaps, mental disabilities.
And that's in the combined district, you're saying? That.
Right, that's throughout the district. And so when you extrapolate that to the whole state, it's hard. It's really hard. And like I said, we also work with people with hearing disabilities, visual impairments, all physical disabilities. AIDS is now a disability category.
That's
so
reaching into the schools?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So any of those population groups, which are sometimes very hard to, and not only is it hard to find a number, but also some of those folks are doing very well in the mainstream, and they don't want to be pulled out to be said that you have a disability, come do some things with us, or we want to do some things for you. It's kind of a fine line that we walk in this agency because of the nature of disabilities, because of the nature of that whole community right now. They want the recognition in terms of funding, and we want to be able to provide some things for them, and yet we don't want to do it in a paternalistic way or a way that's going to cause some bad feelings. So we work with those people that we feel and they feel want some help and want some help into the arts, and we provide some new areas for them to do their thing.
If somebody's watching and is fascinated by this or maybe wants to get involved, how do they contact Very Special Arts?
Well, we are located in Hennepin Center for the Arts, and that's on Hennepin Avenue and 5th Street. Our number is, phone numbers? Okay.
By all means.
332-3888. I have just a part-time position there, but we do have voicemail, so I do get back to people. We're always looking for people that have an interest in either sharing their skills in the arts or helping out in the office or finding some new things. As we develop a new long-range plan, we'll be needing people for various things. So any interest in the arts and any interest in working with people with various disabilities, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, Craig, it's a fascinating program. I'm really glad you're doing it. Thanks for coming on and being on Artifacts.
Thank you.
Good. Well, we'll be back in a moment, but please stay tuned for this in a continuing series of interesting facts about the arts in Minneapolis. Hello and welcome back. I thought that was an amazing fact, the 176 concerts at 2 venues in the Minneapolis parks. Anyhow, in this segment, I'm pleased to have two people here to talk about some programs they're both involved in, one of which is an element of the Minneapolis Arts Commission's New Presenters program. We'll get into some details there. But first, it's Barb Seivert, who's with Mental Health Resources, and she's got a project and a program and a troupe involved with that I'm eager to talk about. And of course, Donna Norberg, who's been on the show before. She's first vice chair of the Minneapolis Arts Commission.
First associate chair.
Associate
or whatever.
chair. So
maybe I'm thinking politics, sorry.
Welcome to you both. I'm glad you're here.
Good to be
Great.
here.
Let's start with you, Donna. The Minneapolis Arts Commission, which actually co-sponsors this show, Artifacts, has amongst its programs the Minority, Ethnic, and Neighborhood
Arts New Presenters
Arts
program.
New Presenters Program. That's a moniker. What do you really call it yourselves when you're sitting around at a panel?
I call it the New Presenters program.
New Presenters Program. And you, not too long ago, a couple months ago, had a round of awards.
We just had our 8th funding round, and we funded 36 programs. I was on your show a year ago, and I think our count at that time was 155, so it's close to 200 programs or projects, I should say, that we have funded in the last 8 years.
And Barb, you're one of those who was funded both last year, as I recall, and
Right.
this year in 1992.
Right.
And your project starts later this year.
Right. The one that we have this year is starting in the fall.
Okay, and what is your project for 1992 that we're talking about?
The 1992 project is a series of creative expression and movement workshops. We're having 2 professionals come in, 2 people in the arts come in and doing those workshops. They also have mental health experience, and so.
Oh, so these folks wear two hats then. They
Yep.
have the arts discipline as part of what they do, but they also have some training in the mental health field.
Yep.
And what's your role? What do you do?
I get to sit and watch this year and enjoy
So you
watching
coordinate.
watching other providers
Right.
do the work.
Now that sounds like last year you had a different role?
That last year I had a very different role.
Very different. Now what was last year's project?
Last year we did a project with a troupe called the Riverside Creative Troupe, and that was a group of members, about 12 to 14 members of our center, who created a whole show of skits, original music, and went out in the Minneapolis community and educated people about mental illness and recovery.
It was
And
called Dare to be Free.
Dare to be Free was the name of the program.
Of the name of the show.
So they
Was
toured about, what
great.
kind of places did they go? I mean, the parks and schools or what?
We wanted to hit a variety of places, so we performed at the U of M, at Augsburg College, at Walker Church, at Riverside Plaza Complex, at Pillsbury Community Center.
Down in South Minneapolis?
All
Well,
over.
interesting. Who came to see? I mean, who were your audiences for these sort of things?
We got the word out through co-ops and other places. I mean, we've got
So the general
things
public
on,
was
sure,
invited.
radio stations, and we had, and there were some mental health, organizations that heard about it and brought people as well.
Actually, it was a very large program. I think that you had set your sights on having maybe, I don't know, 3 to 6 month run or something. It ended up being 9 months to a year that
So an
they were being
extended run.
invited out to do shows.
And we're still invited out to do shows.
Based on last year's, you're
Yes.
saying? Oh.
Yes, but we're no longer operating in that capacity
Okay, so the answer is no for that particular troupe.
for that particular troupe.
Okay.
But other things have happened since then. I mean,
Right.
we've had certain members do segments of our show at different places
On their own?
on their own.
Well, so they're carrying this forward.
Sure.
It's been filmed for cable.
Really?
Yeah, we have one member now who has produced a tape and had edited it and has it all ready to go to cable stations in the metro area. So
And
that'll be
I-
coming out this summer.
Okay, and so people that may be watching this show might get a chance to see that show
Yep.
locally. Now, I heard something before we were taping this show, that of the folks that participated last year in the troupe, really high success in maintaining focus. What was it you said? That nobody during that time of the performance?
Yeah, we were working with people. All of the people in our show were people who have serious mental illness, and those are things like schizophrenia, major depression, multiple personalities, things like that. They're things that aren't going to go away like tomorrow.
Right.
And so, anyway, so it was pretty remarkable that the show was a real healing thing. It had real therapeutic value for people. And out of all the people that were in the show, no one was hospitalized. And in fact, people did very, very well.
So during the course of this 9 months or whatever,
Right.
it was a tremendous focus. Was that a really high success? I mean, I would guess that a certain percentage of folks would really tune in, but 100% were really involved.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, it was great.
Now talk a little bit about what's going on this year and how it's different. This is more movement-oriented. To me, that means dance, but not necessarily, I take it. What kind of
Well,
things?
last year we had a performance orientation, and what the whole goal is to use the arts and people's expertise, the people in the troupe, their expertise. I mean, they're experts. They know what it's like. They know the reality of mental illness, and they know what's helpful in recovery. We decided to use that expertise to educate, and they were very credible educators. So that was kind of more of a community focus. What we decided to do this year was change the focus to our center community and have a more self-empowerment focus for those folks who aren't as performance-oriented, to be able to explore the arts in a safe way, in a creative way, within the context of our center.
Sounds
So
good.
after these workshops, the people in the workshops will be putting on a little performance for the members of our center.
Right, and where is that center? I don't think I mentioned that.
Right on the West Bank in Minneapolis.
So over there.
Right in the Riverside Plaza complex, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's turn back to the Arts
It's a
Commission.
great center.
It sounds good. How could people connect if they wanted to? Can they call you up and find out more about it, or?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And our number is 333-0331 if anybody's interested.
Okay. Could you say that again once more?
333-0331.
Okay. And that's your particular center on the West Bank.
Correct.
Okay.
which is a program of mental health resources.
That's right. And Donna, this wonderful program that we're hearing here from Barb is but one of 3 dozen this year that the Arts Commission is helping to get off the ground. Can you give us a little overview of some of the kinds of other things or areas that this goes on, citywide?
Sure. There is a program that's being sponsored by the Elizabeth Seton School, and that's up in North Minneapolis. That program, or the project that we funded, is to bring in people with varying or different disabilities, and there's also a Hmong culture group that's going to come in, and they're going to be teaching classes at the Elizabeth Seton School, which I translate as kind of a sensitivity awareness type of project. There's also a project that I love at People Serving People, which is 410 building, and for people that don't know, that's a center for the homeless. They have a school for some of the grade school children, and they're going to be running an art project in which the students will be at the school will be doing writing, poetry, they'll be doing some visual art pieces, and they're going to celebrate this on a daily basis with a recognition on a daily basis, a showing of these artworks. It will also be done on a monthly basis, but you know, there's an immediacy when you're dealing with homeless children. There's a need to be recognized to help build self-esteem, et cetera, on a daily basis. And then the end part of that project is that there will be a touring show that will go out with the artwork from these kids. Something that's very dear to my heart, I was not a part of planning this, but Lincoln Junior High School, their PTO, parent-teacher organization, is recruiting residents from the neighborhood to go to Minneapolis Institute of Arts, go through a training process on different artworks, and then they will be taking these artworks back to the school, and they will be teaching classes. So there's different levels of people that are being educated on that project. And I mean, I'm just absolutely thrilled about it. And then there's the City Inc. puts out a book called, publication called Crossroads. That's an alternative, City Inc. is an alternative school. And this book has illustrations and poetry and writing, and we funded that
It's on Lake
this
Street,
year.
I think?
I'm not sure of the location, but I think you're right.
Great,
So
and that's just a
there's
sampling of close to 3 dozen.
Right. There are
this year.
36 projects that we funded for this year. But I do want to say that not all of the, something that people should know when they're looking forward to writing a grant to the Minneapolis Arts Commission is that these projects, in order, we have limited amounts of money, and it does go a long way, but in order to really adequately fund as many as 3 to 4 dozen projects, we can only do partial funding. And basically what I see coming down over the last few years is about 50% funding. So
Of those who are applying, so you're saying
Right.
a lot more people want to get involved than you can really.
well, what I'm saying is if you're looking for $2,000, you're going to get 1,000.
I
That's
see
what
you're
I'm saying.
Okay, so there's a limit there to that sort of thing. Well, now, how does somebody like Barb hear about this program? Maybe I should ask Barb, how did you hear about this? Obviously this year because you've done it last year, but what clued you into the Arts Commission's program?
Actually, a member of our center heard about it.
Okay.
Heard about it. We were already, it's a very arts-focused center. Anyway, we're right on the West Bank. We get people who are attracted to that. This member heard about it. It fit in with what we were already doing. Some members of our center were already going out to nursing homes and high-rises and doing kind of spontaneous variety shows. So this member told us about it. We thought, sure, we'll apply, and went through the process and got the funding.
And it was something that inspired you enough to do it again.
Yes, in a different way.
In a different way, that's right.
Barb also ended up doing a bit of fundraising on her own, too, to be
Yeah.
able to make the project
To make
run
the match
the
and-
length of time. Well,
Yeah.
not just make the match, but because of the demands that were made on them to do their project over and over again.
And also our project became more complex. the musicians, when we first started out, we didn't know exactly who was going to be doing what. We ended up having to buy a complete sound system, mics, everything.
And now you have that equipment to
Yes.
carry on with other things?
Yeah.
So is the expectation maybe to keep doing this sort of thing? I mean, with your program?
For us?
Yeah.
Sure, we're always evolving into something. We're a program that's only 2 years old, so it's kind of
Oh,
remarkable.
Amazing. What a startup.
Yeah.
Now, what's your background? How did you get involved in this sort of thing?
Well, I have a mental health background, and I'm also a musician and an
Okay.
artist, and that's
What
sort
kind
of
of-
tight.
What kind of music do you get involved in? Are you?
Oh, I compose
You do?
music.
Okay.
And,
So I can see the tie-in here. Very
Yeah.
good.
And I'm a licensed social worker on the Arts Commission, so.
yeah,
we
well,
have-
I have a master's in social work as
Right.
well,
Study.
and I've been doing.
But now you didn't know each other before the relationship
No.
began with
No, we
the
didn't.
Arts Commission.
We didn't.
No.
Okay, so it sounds like it worked
Kind
out
of
pretty
breeding
well.
a
Yeah.
nice friendship.
Okay, well, I want to ask one more question of you, Donna, about the future of this program. I mean, the Arts Commission intends to keep going. You're obviously intimately involved with it as a commissioner who cares a lot about it. What are your thoughts about the future and funding for the project and things like that?
I'm hoping that if I can accomplish one thing on the Arts Commission, it would be to increase the funding for the Minority Ethnic Neighborhood Arts New Presenters Program. Right now, for the last 2 years, our funding has been $35,000. That's a match, NEA $5,000, State Arts Board $5,000, and City Council puts in $25,000. I'm hoping that this is a 3-year arts partnership, and it will be up in a year. So in the process of making decisions for the future, I'm hoping to increase that base. I see that $35,000 as stretching a very long way in the community. I mean, it not only brings in, the majority of our projects this summer involve children, and the majority of the projects that were funded, and most of them are taking place this summer. They involve the children. There's a whole lot of growing experiences for them. And then they usually end up in some sort of community event that brings in the whole community. So it's a really good use of dollars, and especially when we're going through this whole neighborhood revitalization process. One way of getting the neighborhood out is to get them involved in things such
And
as
indeed,
this.
it's the neighborhood groups or organizations that Barb's involved with that come and apply.
Right.
And they establish the relationship with professional artists or I suppose avocational artists or whomever. they want.
Exactly. They're called providers.
Right. So that's the big goal then.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it going and keep it growing.
To get a little more funding. I'm hoping that Minnesota State Arts Board will apply for monies from the NEA again for another 3-year
Keep
arts
the partnership
partnership. Maybe we can get a little additional money from them, a better match from or a larger, I bless the city council, but maybe we can get a little larger match
Okay.
from them.
Well, good luck.
And do more of this.
Good luck. I want to thank you both. We could keep going on, and maybe we'll update this again next year. So
Thanks
Donna,
for
thanks for
having
coming
me.
by.
Okay.
Barb, nice to meet
Thank you.
Good luck with your program. And that's it for this show. If you have questions about what you've seen or heard today, you can call the hotline here at City Cable 34, 673-2234, and find out more about this. And please stay tuned for a short calendar of events that are going on here in Minneapolis in the arts. I'm Phill Lindsay. Hello and welcome to Artifacts, the monthly show on City Cable 34, in which we talk about the arts and events that are going on in Minneapolis. Later on, we'll have Georgia Stevens in talking about dance and Blah Blah Blah, which is a cabaret that focuses on movement and dance. But right now, it's a pleasure to introduce Dudley Riggs, who's been making people laugh and think in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities for quite a while. Dudley, thanks for being on the show.
Good to see you.
Sure. Dudley Riggs theaters and the Instant Theater
Right.
go back in this town how long?
Ooh, several Democratic administrations.
That's ancient.
We opened originally in Minneapolis in 1958, and so we've been running continually since '58. We started, the Instant Theater Company started in New York in 1954, and so this is one of the towns that we toured through and found a willing audience here, and so we've stayed.
Well, that's great.
Have never regretted that switch, because this has been a very good town for theater
Well, it has.
and getting better all the time.
Well, and you mentioned a key word, theater. I've got a hunch that a lot of folks think Dudley Riggs, comedy, and they pretty much stop their thought process there. But you are a theater company writing and producing new shows
Right.
every year, more than one a year.
We present 3 or 4 productions a year, and they are always on current events material and on issues of the day. We pride ourselves in being nonpartisan in our political position. We say actually that it's, well, the motto is positive neutrality and promiscuous hostility.
Promiscuous
And
hostility.
so we like to be the loyal opposition to both parties. So currently we're working on something that encompasses both sides of the upcoming election, and in fact we even have something to say about the third leg there that fell off. So,
A certain candidate that pulled out at
Right.
the last minute there.
but that kind of one of the disadvantages of the kind of theater we do is that since it is to a fair degree based upon current events, we are not really able to announce a year ahead what we will be doing. If you were to say, what are we expecting to be doing in January, I will generally have to say it'll wait and see what's in the paper in November and December before we know what's going to go on the show in January.
6 or 8 months is a long time in a topical sense.
Indeed, and in fact, the shows are constantly changing, and as the show evolves over the course of the run, it's an organic thing. It'll change depending on events of the time, and occasionally we will lose a whole portion of the show due to changing events, and we'll substitute new pieces.
And that relates to changes, say, month to month or even week to week. Have you noticed a trend since 1958 or 54 in the climate of America, or maybe in the Twin Cities, a change in the sensibility or the approach to what's going on in our world?
Well, I think I'm worried. I think we're re-entering the Eisenhower years in many sense of the word. We are. It's becoming, the audiences are considerably more conservative than they were before. We have. I'm discovering that the items that in 1975 would have not been considered controversial are now very controversial, and so in a sense it's sort of the pendulum is swinging back, but that's good because we've been in both of these. We were in the Eisenhower years and did very well.
Are you dusting off old material?
Well, actually, looking at sometimes taking a step backwards in the right direction, because it is clear to me that that as the climate cools down and becomes more conservative, there is always a segment of the population that is more thinking and are looking deeper into things, and those become our audience. And that's the primary thing. We have to have an audience that reads and is interested in current
Articulate
events.
audience. What about your talent pool, the actors and your crew and your artistic directors and those folks?
Well, this is a great town for theater, as you know, because we have, there's certainly more work here for actors, and most of the actors at the workshop have come up through the ranks of the workshop, taking classes, improvisation classes, and then frequently they'll end up in our touring group. perhaps being there for a year or two, and then they will join the resident company where they'll stay for a period of time. And then frequently they'll go off to Disney World or somewhere and come back later and teach, you know. So it's, there is a kind of a cycling in and out of the talent pool. We have never at any time found that there's any shortage of talent in this city. There's a great amount of talent here, and unfortunately you can't always get all of it on stage. Sometimes there are a lot of people out there that we would like to see on stage that we haven't managed to get there yet.
Right. Well, time's come.
But,
now, you mentioned a few of the things that you do in addition to your main stage shows, your topical shows. Could you outline a little bit more about those different elements of the theater company?
Well, we do, obviously we have these, we have our little school that we refer to. We teach acting classes and improvisation classes. We also have a student outreach program that is just going to be starting up in earnest this fall. And we have an apprentice program where we have talented people who are experienced and talented, but who have not as yet had a professional job. And so those people are coming into the workshop as well. And then, of course, we're always interested in doing touring. We go to colleges. We do, we play, we do a fair number of shows for corporations. And, you know, sort of auxiliary work, if you will. But it all comes back to that main show that happens 7 times a week at the theater.
Right.
So,
And then on Saturday night, you're still doing your improv at...
improvisation at we say at midnight, but it's really a little after midnight on Sunday morning. And that's become a very popular late night thing to do. For many years, that was the only late night thing in town. Now there's quite a lot to do at that hour, and it's a really interesting thing to watch this happen in the city, because we have, it used to be that people would say that Minneapolis shuts down when the bars close, but it's not true anymore.
That's right, right. And thanks partly to the improv, too. We kept that going. In just a moment, we're going to be able to take a look at a show that you did, I think, called The American Scream. Could you tell us briefly what that was about, and then we'll take a quick look at that?
Yes, this is, I always say, this is an evening of excerpts, because the whole thing would be too much. But it's an hour of selected pieces from the Brave New Workshop repertory that appeared first last January on KTCA and has been rebroadcast a number of times on public television. And this particular piece is paying homage to Robert Bly and to Sam Keane and the Fire in the Belly crowd, as well as making a comment about this fascination with health clubs.
Okay, so The Sensitive Men.
Right.
Okay, let's take a look at this, The American Scream.
All in one day, Jim.
Ah, boy, nice shot, man. You almost knocked the wind out of me.
Thanks. Welcome to the Wild Man's Health Club, Jim.
Thanks.
I mean, it's the only place where you can get in touch with your feelings while you're getting in shape.
Yeah, for only $500 a month.
This is an incredible facility, guys.
Great.
Yeah, we got a sweat lodge over there. We got a drumming and weeping room over there.
Yeah, there's a room down the hall where you can put up a picture of your father and you can tell him things that you never got to tell him when you were a kid.
Dang. What? This is the hunt and confront room, man. Right?
Thanks.
You know, this is the only club where men can be real men.
Yeah. I mean, there's no ancient rituals in our culture anymore. There's no true rites of passage, and so men turn into mush, just like Peter over here.
I'm not mush.
I'm sorry, Peter, but you're turning into mush.
All right.
What's he mean?
Well, that account I was working on?
The one you put all that overtime in.
Yeah, Henderson gave it to the new guy.
What? Pete, you gotta confront Henderson on something that important.
All right, I'm just afraid of him, all right?
Yeah, well, look who's here, Pete.
Ah, my boss! My boss!
I'm the new guy!
Well, that was fun. And I recognized a couple of those actors in there, and that gets back to what you're saying about talent pool. And
Sure. Jim Detmar, Peter Stalock, and Dane Stauffer, who all of whom have been in our company in recent years and who came back and graciously appeared in this production, and have, of course, had a kind of an ongoing relationship with the theater.
Now, you mentioned that was kind of a pastiche of various
I think-
routines or bits you've
I
liked
think
over
we
the years.
originally recorded about 27 or 28 pieces, and so, I mean, there's a lot more there that hasn't been seen yet, but it's a matter of trying, when you're doing a kind of a magazine format for these, both on our stage and in television. I think it's rather compounded in television because people are used to little short blips, and there is frequently no little thread that runs through that ties it and makes it into a play as such. Usually what we do is tied into a theme, but in the case of that KTCA piece, there was no theme at all. So.
And having seen it, though, it worked. I mean,
Sure. But that's, we ask the audience to make up for that deficit in their own minds, and I think they do very well. In the same way that the audience uses their imagination to help us create on stage. As you know, we use minimal props and minimal makeup, and that's probably more dressed than most of our shows. It happens.
And you're talking about stagecraft there, not the costumes they were wearing.
And so we come to a time where we will ask the audience to believe something, and then they help to create the illusion. Otherwise, it would be a little cumbersome because we have only 140 square feet of stage. So
that's right.
Makes it, and we've always had something that small.
Right.
And if we were to suddenly have a huge budget, we would probably still only have 140 square feet.
Large auditorium and still a focus like that. Well, we've got a few moments left, and I want to talk about the show that you're opening this month, August here of.
The new show is called Mad in the USA.
You've got a.
It is about anger. It's about politics. It's about various ways of dealing with anger, and I think it's quite timely. The subtitle for the show is Riot, You'll Like It, and we hope everyone will come and will like it without necessarily rioting. But it is very political, and it's very much dealing with the fact that everyone is carrying a much higher level of anger these days than they would like.
Well, and there's tension right in your title and subtitle there. I mean, the riot coming out of what's happened here in this country, around the country the last so many months and things. You like to stay on that edge.
Well, I think that if we have a purpose, we have to look for the enemy. I mean, I'm always looking, where is the enemy? What's going to be the most troubling thing that will be bothering our audience 3 months from now? And frequently lately it's the economy, and sometimes it's been wars, sometimes it's been domestic problems. But we're sort of constantly trying to find that and then deal with it in a way that does not particularly take a position, but will illuminate other options, and trying to show that there are multiple sides to all of these issues and trying to get a little better understanding, and in some cases trying to get people to be a little riled up and be a little more demanding, and see if we can bring about change.
Thoughtful theater, and a theater with a little bit of stimulation to it.
Yeah, we like to think that we're doing comedy theater for thinking people. So,
Dudley, thanks for coming on the show.
Indeed, so.
It's been fun.
Thank you.
We'll be putting a number up there as to how you can get in touch with the Dudley Riggs Theaters if you want to find out about show times and what's going on. And in a moment, we'll have Georgia Stevens out to talk about what she's involved in. But first, this interesting fact about the arts in Minneapolis.
Facilitate the possible resolution.
And welcome back. In this part of the show, I'm pleased to introduce to you and somebody that I hadn't met in person, Georgia Stevens, who wears many hats in the artistic world. She's a dancer, a choreographer, an actor, and even a writer. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Pleased to have you here. There are a number of things I want to talk with you about, maybe starting out with a little bit about you, but I don't want to forget later talking about what they're calling a cabaret, the blah, blah, blah. And I know that's coming up later this month, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But first I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. What all do you do with your different artistic disciplines here?
I'm all over the map. I'd say right now I'm calling myself, it seems like the main word is performer, because I am a dancer and I am, I have trained in dance for a really long time, but I've always been a writer. And so now I'm also delving into the world of characters, so I'm having to learn some acting skills that would help me do that. Also, a side hobby I have is making soundtracks for people in their productions.
For their creative productions?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
And I do it for my own, too.
And for your own. Mm-hmm. What are some of the projects you've worked on then, both your own and for other folks?
I've mainly done my own, but I've helped other dancers. Probably nobody that you would have heard of. Local people come to me and just ask how to do certain things, if they can combine, sound effects with the sound of, feet walking around the room combined with music, and then I show them how to do it, and I do it for them.
And that's something they'd want so that an audience might get that oral sense while they're watching their performance or something like that.
Right.
Well, how about some of your own productions? I know you did one last fall, the fall of 91, that got some good publicity and hopefully great audiences and things like that. Tell us a little bit about what that production was and what you were trying to say in it, that sort of thing.
It was called O Moon of Amalia Menia.
Okay. And you've got a graphic from that, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you hold that up and we'll take a look at what that is. Okay, now what was that about?
Actually, it was the final version of the Moon Project, and the Moon Project is something I was commissioned to do by Overtones, the Southern Theater's thing that they do in collaboration with music. And so I collaborated with the new music ensemble Zeitgeist, and we did the Moon Project.
Okay.
And that was a work in progress, and then a year later, Zeitgeist and I got back together and expanded on it, and it's, it was about many things. It was about the patriarchy and the matriarchy, and it was about Artemis and Ishtar and some well-known goddesses and a rocket scientist named Dr. Miriam, who was John Munger. And I played the character Artemis, and this is how I really got into, I'm really getting interested in acting and some activities that can help me improve on that.
So this was provocative for you as well then? I mean, you kind of got involved.
It was new territory.
Right.
For a lot of us, because, it was also the first time I used material from my company members. They, at the beginning of each rehearsal, we would come in and write in our diaries in character, and I used some of that material to provide the text.
Okay, now that's an interesting way to create a piece, I would think. Is that common or typical to work on a kind of a group or?
It is pretty common. It hasn't been for me. I've been more of a dictator, but I just got tired of it. I mean, I work with such talented people, and they feel like they're more a part of the process. I think if I, if I use their material, and I'm very careful to credit when I do, that.
How does that feel changing from the dictator to the more collaborative system? I mean.
It feels good, yeah. I mean, it doesn't, it's a little scary because, they might not come up with something, and I go, well, I don't know.
Or maybe they come up with something that
and then
you
I
hadn't
have
been
to
thinking of.
Intervene. Yeah, that's right, right.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's okay with them if I say, okay, I like that, but how about if we change it? And it just goes sideways with it because it'll fit in better if I can.
How does this gel? I mean, you're sitting at home or maybe rehearsing on your own or something. Do you get an idea and you call somebody, like you mentioned, John Munger, and say, I've got an idea, do you want to help me work on it? How do you pull the thoughts and the creative inspiration into what an audience ultimately sees on stage?
Well, before I get too far along, I have to have done a lot of that work myself in my notebook alone, and maybe I can ask people in conversations to, bounce some things off them, but I have to have it pretty well shaped out in order to ask for funding. And then if I get the funding, I do the project. And I've been fairly fortunate in You know, I haven't gotten everything I've wanted, but I've, you know, gotten enough to keep going
So
for a while.
working in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis area has felt pretty good in terms of support and interest. Are you from here originally?
No, I'm from St. Louis.
Missouri?
Mm-hmm.
What brought you here?
A lot of things, the art climate, the financial support system, the Minnesota Dance Alliance, which used to be MICA. It was called the Minnesota Independent Choreographers Alliance. And I visited the year that they incorporated. And I came back to visit again, and I did something at the choreographers evening at the Walker. A friend of mine, Wendy Morris, who also went to college in St. Louis, did it and invited me to be in it, and I was just overwhelmed. Well, you know, back then it was like, I get to perform and I don't have to pay for it.
Right. You got a little support to do it and
Right.
exhibit your own creativity.
And, you know, and it used to be free. That's just recently changed, but it's still very inexpensive.
The choreographers.
Right, yeah, the
evenings.
choreographers evening. And so, you know, it gets
That's a
filled and
great
audiences,
tradition
oh,
for movement
yeah.
here, yeah.
Right.
That's great. Upcoming projects that you're involved in directly?
Well, this is a very unusual year. I might just be experimenting on my company, but I've hired or I've commissioned a man named John Fleming, who's in town from New York for a year, to write and choreograph a play on me. And it's going to be an expanded one-woman show that's going to be anywhere between, I think it's going to be about an hour. So it's an entirely new and extremely challenging venture.
Well, I
for
can
me.
imagine, and you're putting a lot of yourself into the hands of this other creative person now
Right.
to wrap this around you.
We're, you know, kind of co-writing it, and I'm doing a lot of the choreography, but he has the final say in the overall picture.
Do you have a spot in mind where you'd like to perform this, or something in your mind where you're thinking, I'd really like to do this?
Well, I know where I'm going to start it out, at the studio that my partners are in called Space, and that's where we do blah, blah, blah.
Good transition. Okay, now where is that, and what is that?
It's located near 10th and Portland.
Okay.
It's in downtown Minneapolis, and it's a studio that it took us about 2 months to, you know, clean it up and polish it up and paint it and wash it and redo the floors.
What had it been? Or do we want to know?
I
Some
think
raw space, I
an
take it.
upholstery kind of a place.
really?
So, yeah, of furniture. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It had been abandoned for quite some time.
Okay, so you've cleaned that up, and now what do you do there that's called blah, blah, blah?
It's a Monday night cabaret series, and it happens once every 2 months, and it's not quite a part of the late night series. It starts at 8:30, so it's a half hour later than normal. And what we do is invite the public in at about 7:30 to watch us put it together, and we put it together in an hour. And it's everything. It's any art. It's any performance art that exists is
Okay, so
invited.
dance and movement may be a big part of it, but it's not limited to that at all.
Right.
And you've got a couple partners.
Yeah, Sean McConaughey and Paula Mann.
And how did you team up with these folks?
Sort of by accident. We each do our own work, and our own work is all very different from each other. It's not what you would call a like-minded philosophy or anything like that. But we just went into business together to try and make a three-headed thing work easier than a one-headed thing.
And so far, so good.
Yeah.
Who's coming to this? So what kind of audiences are you getting on an
Wow.
8:30 Monday night?
Well, we offer some beverages and some things to eat. So, people just, it's a party. It's called a party, let's see, how do we say it? A party performance extravaganza.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Now
And then we have a house band, and they play before, during, and after, and so they stay around for about an hour, and people dance on the dance floor
So it sounds like this
afterwards.
goes towards midnight or so.
Yeah.
So it is kind of late
Yeah.
night. Sounds like a lot of fun.
It is fun.
Who came up with blah, blah, blah?
Well, we sat around at Fager's one night, and we're trying to figure out a title, and we went, it's going to be this Monday night, blah, blah, blah. And we all went, okay. All of a sudden, we just, kind of looked at each other and said, oh, I dare us to do that. Because we kept saying, blah, blah, blah. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's blah, blah, blah.
And that's what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
That's
you have to
catchy
say it
name.
kind of fast, otherwise it sounds kind of blah.
Sure. Now, at the end of this show that we're talking on right now, there'll be a calendar mentioning that it's August 10th.
Right.
Do you know the street address? I think we've got that on the calendar.
609 10th Street.
Okay, that rings a bell. Anyhow, they'll see it at the end of the show. So what might they, maybe you don't even know yet who's going to show up and do it. Are you going to have a piece in there?
I'm going to show the first 5 minutes of this play I've just been talking about.
Okay.
It's untitled, but it's based on a character who's announcing the end of the patriarchy.
Just announcing it.
Announcing it,
Okay,
yeah.
good for a start.
Yeah, Dr. Lucy is her name. And we have, I don't have that list with me, and I'm not the person doing the calendar this time, so I just offhand, I know Lori Van Weer and Tim Herwig, we've got a gospel singer, we've got a tap group coming.
Sounds like
Sean is doing a group piece, a lot of
eclectic.
Oh yeah,
and
a
lot of fun.
storyteller.
That sounds good. Okay. I wanted to shift gears. We've got about a minute or two left, and I want to just ask, because of your interest in dance and movement and things artistic, it's always important that not only audiences get trained, but the next generation of dancers and the young people. Do you have any impression of how things are out there in dance education and the training? And I don't know if this relates to how you got started, but how are things in the 1990s for young people that might be interested in growing up to do the kinds of things you're doing professionally?
Well, I hesitate to say this because I think it's almost changing as I say this, but it's a lot less passionate than it used to be in the 70s. I think the 80s were, put a little bit of a downer on the arts and, the Jesse Helms thing and all those voices being heard loud and clear. Yeah, and money is, I think, a little more of an issue with the generations that are coming up or have come up. That's not across the board true, but in general, I think there's an increase in concern with money, so the arts it doesn't have that religious fervor that I remember having in the 70s, the time I got involved.
Well, it's a good answer, but one with a little caution involved there.
Yeah.
So. Well, George, it's been nice to get to know you a little bit, and I
thanks.
hope people will make an effort to get out to Blah 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 every other month on a
Monday always.
Always on a Monday,
Right.
but every other month.
Right.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions about what we talked about, whether it was with Georgia or Dudley, you can call the Cable 34 hotline, 673-2234, and probably get your voice recorded. Now, next month, we're going to start a new feature here called Art News. So look forward to that, about changes in personnel or major projects or things that might be happening in the arts in Minneapolis. So tune in again, watch the show. I'm Phill Lindsay.